Alright, so here we are on the rock with the modified cantilever chassis. Just see how it runs. Give you an idea of, what it can and can't do. Of course, I'm steering this thing with one hand, so that pretty much sucks. Tires are wet because I just washed the grit off of them. Let's see what it does. Alright. I've run this rock a lot, so it's kind of easy for me to tell if there's an improvement or if there's something that needs to change. And I can try different ways across it and see what happens. I get stuck in a crevice and stuff like that. Really see the action of it now, right? Alright, I found a way to operate two-handed now. So, if I can get this to go across here, I've really got something good going on. If I can get that tire to not slide down in the hole so much. Just follow this little crevice. And this tire will drop in. Oh gosh, I wish there was another place I could set up the camera. There we go. Alright. That camera's really crooked, but I got it angled up on a notch. Now this is where the tires are going to want to do something bad. But if I can steer up, see how the back tire is starting to lift? I don't know if you can see that. Right there is where the back tire starts to lift. It'd be nice if it would push itself down a little more. Maybe if I just keep a very straight steering angle. This part here I can get across pretty good to here. And then I'm okay. Once I get to here, even though it looks pretty insane, it's doable. Now I'm starting to see the front wheel lifting. This is where you would really like to have some downward pressure on that front wheel. And this is pretty much, I'm getting to the limits of adhesion here. And normally, if I had my both hands, I would be able to do a reverse maneuver. It's going to be tricky. There we go. And if I can reverse enough, I can get it to go up instead of down. Ooh, it's still lifting. You see the rear tire lifting? Yeah. See, when it was stiffer, it wasn't doing that so much. It would stay planted right up to the point where it would suddenly tip. That's why I like this rock, because I guess I've just gone over it so many times. It really gives me some good ideas about whether or not something's going to work. Let's try it from over this way. Let's see how it handles. Yeah. See, the modification I made to make the chassis more supple by putting the shocks way forward like this with the strange upper lengths, it's pretty much irreversible for this particular chassis. I'd have to remake the chassis, remake the links to be able to go back to my stiffer setup. So I'm hoping that I got something that I can work with. Got enough clearance to get over some pretty gnarly stuff. Let's clearing that back link. Able to control and get over things that might high side it. Let's see how it works going up here. There's a gnarly rock up here that's difficult to get up over. This one over here. So what I've been trying to do is find the most difficult possible way to mount. And that is basically the most difficult mount, and it just went right up it. So what I've found is every time I change this chassis around, every time I build a new chassis, every time I change shock mounts, everything, I have to learn how to drive it, because it's changed a little bit, and it's become more capable in some ways and then less capable in other ways, because it's always about compromises. You go for a soupy sandwich, you know, you can't keep the tire up in the air over the holes. Right here there's some big holes, and what's going to happen is the tire's just going to drop into them. Now this is another challenge, that if I can dismount by going down this gap without flipping head over heels or just going sideways or something stupid happening, then I'm pretty happy. Can't fall down in the crack, or you don't. So if I can keep the wheels in exactly the right place, not get too high up, come down too far, I can skate all the way down this one. That was a successful dismount. So, I'm really liking how the chassis has a nice low center of gravity. That's a good thing. That low center of gravity is keeping it from endoing. And I'm liking how it's got a little bit of stiffness, but it's still flexible. You can see it goes over stuff like nothing. And then this is a dismount that really kind of puts it through its paces here, because when it comes off here, it's every which way. See, you can really see it stretch itself out. And didn't flip over. Yay. Back up onto the big rock. See, this is, I'm not liking some of the action I'm seeing. The way it's lifting the wheel up, I'm not really liking that much. I want to work with that, figure out what to do about that. I don't want it to be tippy. That's what I'm trying to get away from. I really can't get much lower with my center of gravity or my ride height, I don't think. The only thing I can do is distribute the mass differently, and maybe work with a different shock setup. This is where it's going to want to almost flip over too. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to push it to that edge where it almost wants to flip over. I want to see if it does or doesn't, or if I can get it to comply. Alright, now for my next test, I'm going to spin these babies all the way up. I'm going to do it totally loose and see. So this will be the two extremes. That's a pretty much maximum shock tension, and That felt a little tippy. I'll just run it again with the shocks collars all the way up. It's a beautiful morning here. It's not too hot yet. It's been getting up to 90 already. You know, it's kind of nice to have a little cool weather. Now with it totally sloppy, I want to see if it's less tippy or more tippy. Okay, see how it's starting to do its tip, but I can drop that down with a couple of wiggles. So it just requires slightly different style. This is what I call my creeper style, because when it's all soupy and soft like that, hear the hawk? When it's all soupy and soft like this, I have to move a lot slower and I have to do a lot more wiggling and shimmying and shaking, but I can get places. Now when I'm trying to do something like get across a gap like this, the stiffer allows that wheel to float right across this hole. But now that it's all soupy, I'm not sure if it'll do that. Yeah, it's floated pretty good. The front is really stiff, the back is really soft. It's just a completely opposite setup of what I usually run. I usually run a stiff back and a soft front. So it's just a whole different. See how the rear just dropped right into the hole where the axle was on the rock. But I can work with it. Now on this same dismount that I've been doing, I can see whether or not I'm clearing everything again. See, now I'm hanging up a little more. Just that 15 millimeters or whatever of ride height from the droop setting. And then I like to try and skate all the way down that thing. Now you can see we got a wheel up in the air here, but I can drop it, get it to stay down. You know, because I got just this one rock to mess with, I keep coming up with harder and harder ways to get onto it. In my mind, one of the hardest ways is to try and come up the edge of this whole rock, which is really hard when it wants to do that. Hey, that's great. I like how it flips back on its wheels. That's a cool thing. I think the skinny chassis is part of why that does that. Low center of gravity, skinny chassis. Alright. And the dog is back. And it's a dog. It's a dog. It's a dog. Dog says, I can go anywhere that thing can go. I don't know what the big deal is. You don't need that. You just need a dog, man. If you want to get up on the rocks, get a dog. Alright, let's watch it in action. See how it works when it's all soft and soupy. See what I'm saying? She has to do that. She's showing off. She's trying to show me she can go anywhere this thing can go. She's so funny. Ooh, stick her snoot in that hole. What'd you find? What's up in there? Is something up in there? You better hope it's not a bee's nest. You better hope that's not a bee's nest. Oh my gosh. What did you find? Oh my gosh. And if a whole bunch of bees come flying out of there, I'm out of here. Okay? I don't know what you're up to. It's at somebody's house. Alright. Now, like I was saying, what I like to try and do is get right onto the rock, which is not as easy as it looks, because it's going to want to jettison me off at an angle or something, or drop me into a crevice. Okay. So now I'm all laid out on the rock in my usual creeper-like manner. Let's check that out compared to what I was doing before. I'll try that low line again, which is way fun. So far, I'm feeling more confident. I guess because I'm just used to this kind of loose sloppy suspension, even though it's backwards to my usual setup with a loose back and a tight front. And right here is where it's going to want to tip, right? Yep, front tire's just coming up off the rock here. Yeah. But because it's so soft, all I got to do is just wiggle that steering and I can make things happen. This is where I start moving super slow, because I can make changes as I'm going. Oh yeah. Yeah. I just got to trust the soup. I was real intrigued by the super stiff suspension because it's a lot like my buddy's Bully 2 build. He's got a real stiff suspension, but he also has like 10 times more torque and wheel speed. So he can do these little hops and jumps and skips and bounces around and stuff that you just can't do with this little winky-dinky RC390 motors and 2S LiPo. But I think you can see that this thing is really doing some interesting crawling. This is not, by any means, something that a stock Redcat RS10 could do, because I know, because I've tried. It would just roll over right here. Now, if I'm lucky and the tires bite right and don't slide too much, I should be able to just track straight across. That's a beautiful thing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and put the camera up here. The dog will leave it alone long enough for it to happen. Okay, there you go. I'm going to try and show you with my two-handed driving. When I come to this point and I get over here, first of all, my servo is so weak that it doesn't want to turn until I start moving, which is kind of frustrating. But I've learned to work with it. Now this is where it gets crazy. See, I've got my rear wheels starting to hang totally off. And then what I do is I use a little bit of throttle action, and I shimmy, and I shimmy, until I get it just the way I want. Now this is a really crazy position to be. You're at the point where you're about to slide off. If I move towards the camera, I will definitely slide off. But if I move this way, now I've turned around, and I'm out of here. Watch it come out of frame. Move the camera over so you can see where I ended up. So, now, turned around and this is basically easy crawling at this point. I mean, you can do it wrong and flip over, but basically once you get up like this, you're almost, so level that you have to do something pretty stupid to flip it. So what I like to do sometimes is come down to the most untenable position, like it's down here. I think you can see that this is really not an ideal place to be, because when I start turning, you can see it's sliding. So sometimes I do this just to see what I can get away with. Come down as far as I can. Huh. Back to the rock. But at this point, I'm still not making quite enough contact with the wheels. It's really the weak spot of this whole vehicle, the chassis, is the axles. The very high gear case, high motor mounting position of the RS10 axles just limits what you can do. But it's just like with the rocks, you can either say, well, let's move that rock, it's too hard to climb over, or you can learn how to deal with your challenge. Like, for instance, coming up on top of this rock, I've never had any results with this, because it just spins out. But if I can actually get up on top of this rock from here, I will be very impressed. Wow. Okay. So it's more capable than it was. Still not super crawler. not a bully to, and never will be. But I love seeing improvements. I love seeing that it can do things that it couldn't do last time. But I also like seeing the things that it could do last time that it won't do now. And then figuring out whether that's good or bad. Can I live with it or not? Yeah, I know this may not be the most fascinating video in the world, because there's definitely a lot more interesting rocks out there. You know, I've just got this one big rock that I've been working with, because it's close to the house, it's huge, and when I first started crawling this, I couldn't do all this stuff. I just couldn't. Like from here to here, I couldn't go across the top. It would flip about right there. That's where it would flip. And I didn't have as much steering angle. I couldn't make that turn. I had to try and reverse and all this stuff. But now, I can come all the way across the ridge of this thing, no problem. And then, like I showed you, I was able to back it up. This is just so fun trying to, now you're here, now you want to try and turn it around. And then I work on, what can I do to turn this around? And how much can it do? See, the tires are pretty amazing. These HB Rover White Dots, but I bet you if I had some better foams in it. The Proline 2-stage foams did not last as long as I was hoping. I guess because I just put them through a lot. But you can see how nice it is that it can just get right up that, and I'm out of there. And then I can crawl back across the ridge. Get all the way up. Now here, this is a tippy point. You go too crazy, too fast, do something too stupid here. But I can get all the way across the ridge. Which is another little line I like to try because it's hard. And then see how it does stuff like. You can see this is going to get weird. And it works. Now I'm right in the gap. What's going to happen? It just pops over. I like it. The stiff front is actually helping me because the back will basically go wherever I drag it. With all the action up front, it's kind of nice having a slightly stiffer front. This is why another real weird dismount is when I try and go all the way down this thing, this knife edge. This is the knife edge dismount. You can see that rock is nothing but a point. And if you can get down this thing without falling, or getting hung up, yeah, that's pretty awesome. I think that's a pretty stout dismount right there. If you don't end up flipped over, you got a pretty decent crawl. And there you go. So, that's just my testing video. Kind of give you a live demonstration. This is the first time I've driven it since I did all the link stuff that I did last night. Just show you what it can and can't do.